Good morning, headmaster, teachers, and boys. Today, I would like to talk about the meaning of the city. When I was young, my parents taught me that Hong Kong was one of the finest cities in the world. As a person who grew up in the 90s, I witnessed some of the most vibrant years that Hong Kong enjoyed, when the economy was booming, when its technology was developing swiftly, and when the island was one of the safest places in the world, with a beautiful crafted skyline that symbolizes the diligence of the city, as well as the ambitious pursuits of its citizens. Nonetheless, the image of Hong Kong took a very sharp turn within the past 100 days. 2 months ago, many in Hong Kong still boasted of this classic picture of peaceful protesters courteously giving way to an ambulance passing through despite their discontent against the government. This picture even stole the front pages of many significant media outlets across the world. Unfortunately, such a beautiful fairy tale no longer exists, as our cell phones are now filled with images of violence and hatred that painfully describe the dividedness in Hong Kong. So how did our city go from one of the safest cities in the world to this? My role today is not to analyze the cause of the matter for you, for the complexity of the matter is of such that any explanation will only cause greater unrest to any assembly. But I will tell you what a city was supposed to be, according to the Bible. When we think of a city, most of us think of a dense and packed population where people make and spend their money, where new ideas for mankind are developed, and where the most intelligent brain workers convene and celebrate their achievements. Unfortunately, cities across the world have also earned their fair share of negative images, even without any reference to the current crisis in Hong Kong. Any city across the world seems to be a breeding ground for the worst crimes of all sorts. Drugs, prostitution, illegal gambling, gang violence, criminal frauds have always plagued various cities across the world. Even during biblical times, we read that various cities were built to celebrate wild living. The Tower of Babel, Sodom and Gomorrah, Nineveh, and Babylon, but to name a few. It seems that the meaning of the city has almost become synonymous with sin and rebellion. Yet what does the Bible actually say about the city? The Bible mentions that when Jesus comes back to rule as king, God's people will dwell with God in a city called the New Jerusalem, a place where God himself will be with them and be their God, where he will wipe away every tear from the eyes of his people, and where there will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old heavens and the old earth will have passed away by then. In other words, the concept of the city was God's original design all along. It was meant for justice and not for pervertedness, for protection and not for danger, for good and not for evil. Even after sin entered the world, the city still had its purpose as a refuge that was meant to protect mankind from the dangerous living conditions of the wilderness. As the world developed, the city became a place of protection for the needy, where people sought protection from wild animals, uncivilized tribes, and criminals, and where civil justice could be administered for the homeless, the poor, the sick, and the weak. How ironic has the city become when cities nowadays often oppress the homeless, the poor, the sick, and the weak? So you might ask, what then can we do? Even without the current crisis in Hong Kong, these social problems are much greater than what anyone could bear. The answer is simple, but an important one. We build Diocesan Hill together. For the Bible teaches that whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. Yet whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. Throughout history, great men of courage and integrity have come from this school. From Dr. Sun Yat-sen, who overthrew the Qing dynasty and founded the Republic of China, to the countless DBS students who volunteered to defend Hong Kong from falling into the hands of Japanese imperial forces. Generation after generation of valiant men have come from this Diocesan Hill. Who is to say that God would not call on your generation to rise with valor and to bring positive and lasting changes to Hong Kong? But before that can happen, before you learn to build the city of Hong Kong, you must first learn to build a godly city upon Diocesan Hill. A godly city where you uphold what is right and you stand for what is just. A godly city where the least of your brothers are protected and defended rather than bullied or hurt. A godly city where your fellow teachers and your fellow brothers are treated with respect both in private and in public. A godly city where groundless gossip and insults simply do not belong. And when God returns to judge the citizens of Diocesan Hill, he will neither ask about the grand slams that we have captured, nor will he ask about the championships we have conquered. Rather, he will ask if we have been a city that acts justly, a city that loves mercy, and a city that walks humbly with the Lord our God. And when we see God face to face, may we all hear him say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness." Amen.